So I guess from zombie bashers to what is essentially a zombie clown, where did the idea for Stitches actually come from?
I think it came from I was trying to write like a horror comedy. I knew I wanted to write a horror comedy, but I've been writing like I had another idea. It was based on a real life serial killer, and I was trying to. I think every time I wrote a draft, people were saying it just doesn't really work. This serious kind of subject, trying to make it into a comedy. So I was sort of it just when it kind of clicked with me that a clown would be a better basis just from the very start of a horror comedy. Like it almost seemed perfect as mixed the two because you could kind of be scary and also then you could work in the kind of I guess also the kind of clownish death as well was sort of part of it. So I think once those things clicked, it was sort of it just seemed like the perfect starting point for a horror comedy.
Yeah. What I like about it is really it's one of those films that I guess truly subverts audience expectations. I mean, I always try and go into films with an open mind, but then suddenly this plot appears. Um, it gets thrown in your face where you have Ross Noble as this undead clown coming back to life to massacre these teenagers at a house party, and I guess it's somewhat difficult not to have certain expectations. But Stitches to me was such a pleasant surprise. I mean, it really reminded me of one of those. It kind of reminded me of like one of the a Nightmare on Elm Street sequels where the kills got that much more kind of outrageous and fun, and the movie had become more sort of
Yeah,
comedic.
it's funny that was definitely a reference point, and it was almost like, okay, we're making not Nightmare on Elm Street one, but like Nightmare on Elm Street three. That was almost my reference point, because like even I suppose by number three, Freddy, he's not as scary as he was in number one. You know, he's almost become a bit more comic. You know, and definitely that era of films was something that was kind of what I wanted to do. Try and almost try and make one of those films and not be too postmodern about it, but almost just make it like you might have just rented it out from the 80s, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's definitely got that real kind of 80s slasher vibe to it, and I think that's going to please a lot of genre fans. And I was at the Fright Fest screening, and certainly, the reaction was pretty telling. And if you win over Fright Fest, you're pretty much set, I think. So was it a case of were these the kind of films that you grew up, appreciating, and was it a case of you wanting to kind of
um,
recreate?
no, I was kind of the opposite because like I was quite like I wasn't allowed to look at anything when I was a kid, so I sort of came to horror quite late. So, but it's probably because then I suddenly realised there was so much of it. I sort of massively OD'd on it all. Um, but I think I mean I remember so like definitely the film that had the most influence was Evil Dead 2. Like when I remember seeing that because I thought that was the first where I kind of especially just making these silly films, with video camera like a lot of people, just my brothers and friends. And I guess when I saw Evil Dead 2 and we literally just started making films like that, trying to make silly horror comedies, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And why was it a clown? I mean, do you yourself have this like a particular fear, or did you just want to kind of tap into a phobia that many people have and sort of give it this nice comedic twist?
Uh, um, it's definitely something that over the years I've always like every so often it just comes up. It just I don't know, just people like um, why are clowns scary? Are they scary? Some people don't find them scary, other people do. It was just sort of it was a conversation I almost had once a year with somebody or an argument where somebody would say they don't find them scary, other people would be just freaked out by them. So there was definitely something interesting about it, you know. And I suppose it was that, and also I mean, I suppose it is the classic one, but aside from that, I guess it hasn't really been touched a whole lot in a long while. So I kind of felt that there was room to kind of to do one. I haven't seen one in a while.
Yeah, yeah. I was trying to think myself actually of killer clowns, and I couldn't really think of that many. I mean, like you mentioned, it, but apart from that, I mean, that's really kind of
Killer
wide
clowns from outer
open.
space, I suppose.
Oh yeah,
Is one.
yeah. So how did Ross Noble get involved in the project? I mean, it's inspired casting to say the least, I think, but he's fantastic in the role.
Yeah, no, I think it's got to be his hair, with the start, like, because I've seen his stand-up comedy, and I thought the two things I wanted was like somebody because I needed somebody funny in the part, if you know what I mean, rather than somebody trying to be funny. Because like I think if you have someone funny, you can almost play it straight and they'll somehow come across kind of comedic, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think seeing Ross on stage, like one, I think it was the hair, just sort of something clownish about him, and he was very physical on stage. And I guess that turned out he actually was. He used to be a kid entertainer, so it was kind of funny for him because he sometimes found it hard to play a bad clown. So like when I was telling him to juggle badly, it was actually really hard for him because he could actually juggle very well.
So, how much did he do any ad libbing at all, or did he kind of stick to the script?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, like part of me was wondering, because like I mean, I love improv and stuff, and I suppose almost the nature of that role is you don't have a huge amount of room to maneuver because I suppose it's like the Freddy Krueger thing. He pops up, says a couple of lines, and disappears for a while. So I mean, within that, I suppose within that small limitation, there was room for ad libs. So like I might have written a line one way, and Ross would just sort of twist it into his own way of saying it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But even aside from just line dialogue wise, you know, he would always be coming in each morning. You know, he'd come in and go, "I've got an idea," you know, and he'd have some new trick up his sleeve or something he wanted to do. So you know, he was very much he got into the whole thing. You know.
And with the teenagers in the film, they were quite a rowdy bunch on screen. How was the process of casting them?
Well, we were kind of, I guess, as usual, you know, you just go to all the. I mean, what was tricky was it was a weird age group because normally, like, I know a lot of actors or people like in the older age group, but I guess when you're trying to cast, and I was sort of at the start, I wanted to keep the age low, like I wanted them mostly to be 17, 18, and so you're almost if you're doing that, you're almost trying to find people from scratch, you know. So it was, I mean, it was quite hard, like, and we did see a lot of people, and like we ended up getting a couple in schools, you know, just like going out to schools and um, that kind of thing. But yeah, it was tricky because you know you're trying to cast different people and sort of make it like they're all friends, even though like they have about a week to sort of hang out together, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely a long. And you also kind of you know want people. And the hard part actually was I needed to cast the older people to be able to cast the kids, just so they all looked somewhat similar, you know. So that was sort of a tricky process because you kind of wanted someone who looked like the older kids, but then who was also, halfway decent, like.
And there's certainly some highly innovative and pretty nasty, but in a fun way, kills in the film. And
Yeah.
what was the writing process like with your co-writer in coming up with these kind of
Um.
nasty things? I mean, were there any ideas that
Well, for me, that.
um,
What did you say there? Was there any? What,
yeah, as well as that, were there any ideas that perhaps you didn't get to use but sort of really wanted to that you sprang to mind?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's always the annoying part. Like you're strapped for time, and like there's certainly scenes that were a bit longer, or there was extra moments within the sequences, so we just would run out of time. But I mean, for me, almost the death scenes are like the starting point. Like it's almost where I like, and it's also the place I have the most fun with, you know. So in a way, that's how I test if it's worth writing the rest of the film. It's like, so when I came up with the clown idea, it's all, literally the starting point was trying to come up with elaborate death sequences, and there were definitely a few that like I didn't get to do, but I guess with those you just keep them for the next film, you know.
Yeah, yeah, keep them for the sequel. So what's next for you? I mean, do you want to continue working, in a horror, or do you have any other projects lined up that are in other genres?
Yeah, I'm hoping to just I'm doing a bit of writing with Stephen Shields again, just to see if the zombie bashes idea might stay in a feature length. So we're tinkering a little bit with that, and then I've one or two other ideas. Um, Again, they're all kind of in the horror comedy slash genre. So nothing absolutely definite. I suppose it'll almost. I think when this film comes out and I'll almost feel like okay, now I can sort of start again, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent. Well, I wish you the best of luck with the release of Stitches.